So today we're going to talk about purchase considerations for a new computer. Now, again, hopefully nobody is using the old Windows 7 machines. And so now the other thing is, are you seeing the whole screen? Because the bottom part looks cut off. I know that. Anyway, so what this picture is supposed to portray is you are the experts on computers because you are at Tech for Seniors or you're at Silvercom CTC, and people often will come to you as wise people and ask what type of computers to buy. So what we're going to talk about today is five people who are going to come to you and ask you what computer to buy. So the first is a man who is Fred. Fred is a 71-year-old computer man, or sorry. You're going to choose. So the goal here is we're going to go through 5 people, and I want everyone to think about it, but you're going to recommend either a Windows 10 laptop, you're going to recommend a Chromebook, you're going to recommend an iMac, an iPad, or a Kindle Fire, okay? So as we go through this, you're going to recommend, I want you to think about what you would recommend, and I'll tell you what I'm going to recommend, and this will give you some, and then at the end, you'll sort of see how this all affects how you might think about purchasing a computer. So Fred is a 71-year-old widowed man who wants to buy a new computer. He knows you are a member of Silvercom CTC or Tech for Seniors and asks your advice. And so what questions would you ask? Well, you could say, do you own a computer? And Fred would say, yes, I have an old Windows 7 machine that is on its last legs. Do you like Windows and do you use your computer very much? Well, he says Windows is complicated and using a computer once a week to do banking, check email, and look at sports scores. And that's really all he does. And he really finds Windows very complicated. So the next thing that I asked Fred was, I said, you know, Fred, do you own a cell phone? And he says, no, I don't own a cell phone. But my kids want me to get one because I had a heart attack 6 months ago, and they live in Australia. Oh, by the way, I got to tell you, when I gave this presentation to my club, everybody in the club thought it's Brown doing another Chromebook, promoting Chromebooks. So I want to just tell you that to start out with, all right? That's not the case, all right? So he says, no, but my kids want me to get one because I had a heart attack 6 months ago, and they live in Australia. So you talk to Fred and you say, well, you know, that's a long way away. And Fred looks a little depressed and says, you know, they never call me. You know, last time I visited them in Australia, the grandkids had phones and they did this thing called FaceTime. Now, for those of you who are not Apple people, FaceTime is, well, it's not a messaging, it's video calling, and it's like on steroids. It is a super good system that Apple has used for many years, but it's only available on Apple devices. So if they had decided many years ago to allow everybody to use this, it would be the world standard. But this is really, really significant if you want to keep in touch with people in the family who have other Apple devices. So Fred doesn't have a cell phone. He wants to keep in touch with his family. So what are Fred's purchase requirements here? Well, he has minimal computing requirements. He doesn't do much with it. His big issue here is he needs to purchase a cell phone. He needs better communication with his family, which is FaceTime. He had a recent heart attack, right? So all you of people who watch my Saving Your Life with Wearable Technology will think, watch, Apple Watch, and he doesn't like Windows. So here's a fella that I would recommend. I think he would be great to have I would get him an iPhone. Maybe the iPhone SE would be fine. He could get an Apple Watch, And I think this is someone who would do real well with an iPad. He would just do fine with an iPad. It would all work together, and it would be great. So that's what I would sort of recommend in this situation. So as I said, Fred requires a cell phone. His family uses iPhones and does FaceTime, and his computer needs are minimal. So I think that would be the right package for Fred. All right, let's go on. And when you're considering this, try to stay within the same operating system. One of the big problems I see is that particularly someone has an iPhone and they go and buy a Chromebook, and then they come to our Chromebook SIG and they have an iPhone. I mean, it really, I would tend to try and stay in the same operating system. It just works better. Consider your smartphone for future purchases. Always consider how this is going to play into what computer you buy. Consider your family members, and as we talk about in a minute, let's consider any special requirements. So the next person is Larry, is a 68-year-old retired accountant who comes to Silveridge in our winter to play golf and play pickleball. He's a popular guy and a treasurer for many clubs. He uses Excel for his accounting and checks his email every day. Larry doesn't spend much time on the computer and asks for advice on his dying Windows 7 machine. So, what questions would you ask? Well, the first is, what cell phone do you own? And he says, well, I own an Android, 3-year-old Android. Does your wife use a computer? Yes, checks her email once a week and uses it for sewing programs. Okay. So does your wife have a cell phone? No. So Larry's purchase requirements, of course, he's an accountant. And, you know, accountants have always lived in Excel. Their whole life, that's the only program they ever know is Excel. And so they're really in Excel. So I probably are going to keep them in Windows Excel. The key here is his wife also uses the computer, and she has some sewing programs. I bet those sewing programs are Windows only. So in his consideration, I think, and he also has an Android phone. So in his consideration, I would get him a Windows 10 laptop. I think this is a good example of that. I suspect his wife's sewing program would not run on a Chromebook. So that consider other people in your family when you're looking at it. All right. So Mary, the third person is Mary is a 68-year-old permanent resident Silveridge. Since her husband's death 2 years ago, she has struggled with making her old Windows 7 machine work. She is a member of the Silvercom Computer Club and heard about Chromebooks. Her neighbor and best friend has a Chromebook and thinks it's great. She wonders if she could get a Chromebook or iPad and asks for your advice. So, what questions would you ask? Well, I said, Mary, what do you use your computer for? She says, well, I use it for email, banking, and Facebook. So I then say, well, what cell phone do you own? Well, she loves taking pictures and just purchased a Pixel 4, an Android phone, to add to her large photo collection of Google Photos. So she has an Android phone. She's into pictures. She's doing Google Photos. So and she wants to know iPad or Chromebook. Well, this is a good example of where a Chromebook would fit in really well. She has an Android phone, and that will work well and connect well with the Chromebook. So that would be, and particularly a Pixel 4, so that would be a good fit. So in her case, I would recommend a Chromebook, okay? So then let's go on to so she has minimal computer requirements. She has a friend with a Chromebook. She has an Android phone, and she has Google Photos, which is great. All right, then we come up with Charles. Charles is the fourth person. He's a widowed fine arts teacher who comes to Silveridge for the winter. He teaches dancing and wants to make instructional videos. Charles has some expensive movie cameras and really wants to get into video editing. He is financially well off and asks your advice on what computer he should buy. Well, the first thing you say is, do you own a computer? And he says, no, But at school, we had iMacs. Do you own a cell phone? Yes, I own an iPhone 11. This is one where you simply tell them where the Apple Store is. This is a classic example of where he's going to buy an iMac. And don't even discuss it, just send them right to the Apple Store. He's the classic example of someone who, because Apple does really well with video editing, he already has Apple equipment, so he would be an iMac candidate. Now, and I want to just, in closing, I want to talk about Jerry and Carol want to buy their 6- and 8-year-old grandchildren computers for Christmas. They are worried about safety on the internet and websites that children shouldn't see. And I brought this one up and threw it in because what I'd like to remember is the Fire HD 10s, the Amazon devices. These are really, really excellent devices, and they're cheap. They are so cheap. They're about the third of the cost of the Samsung tablet, and they are very protective for children. And Gail has one, my wife, and I bought her, I think it was on, and we're coming up to Amazon's big sale of the year, their Amazon Day in the summer, and these things go on sale so cheap. I think I bought Gail's was $160. These are 10-inch screens, and I think it was on sale for $120, and then they threw in another 30, another bunch of RAM. I think I got for 128 gigabytes of RAM for $120. So these devices are really cool. And I just wanted to remind everybody that for computer needs, these are fun. Now the only downside is you really are falling into the Amazon ecosystem, but they do work well on the web. You can do email and all sorts of stuff with them. So don't forget about these. So those are my 4 picks. It's 9:30. I am going to get the heck out of here and stop sharing my screen because Huey's up.
First, file compression, or zip files. I'm Huey Poplock. First, let's start out with a little bit about the history of zip files. In 1985, Tom Henderson of System Enhancement Associates, also known as SEA, wrote a program called ARC that not only grouped files into a single archive file, but also compressed them to save disk space. This was a feature of great importance on early personal computers, where space was very limited and modem transmission speeds were extremely slow. The archive files produced by ARC had file names ending in .arc and were thus sometimes called ARC files. Later, Phil Katz developed his own shareware utilities, PKArc and PKXArc, to create archive files and extract their contents. These files worked with the archive file format used by ARC and were significantly faster than ARC on the IBM PC platform due to selective assembly language coding. Unlike C, which combined archive creation and archive file extraction in a single program, Katz divided these functions between 2 separate utilities, reducing the amount of memory needed to run them. PKArc also allowed the creation of self-extracting archives, which could unpack themselves without requiring an external file extraction utility. The company that made ARC, called C, or the System Enhancement Associates, sued PKArc, and they claimed that the file format for .arc was their copyright and that the PKArc guy was not allowed to copy it. C sued the PKArc guy and won. So the PKArc guy made a new format called .zip. And it compressed better than .arc, and within a few months, ARC files were a thing of the past, and zip files became the standard, and C pretty much disappeared. Now, why was this important? Back in those days, in the mid and late 80s, 5 megabyte files were almost unheard of, but let's just take for an example a 5 megabyte photo that we have these days, which would be about a 5 megapixel picture. In those days, in a 1200 baud modem, it would take 9 hours, 42 minutes, and 52 seconds to transmit that 5 megabyte photo. As the speeds of modems increased, they got up to 56K modems. It still would take 12 minutes and 28 seconds, or 12 and a half minutes, for one picture to transmit and download. Today, on a 10 megabit internet, it takes 4 seconds. If you have 40 megabits, it's 1 second. Now, to compare that with some existing files, let's say a 1 gigabyte file on a 56K modem, that would take 41 hours and 25 minutes to download. In today's internet speeds, at 10 megabits, that takes about a little over 14 minutes. At 4 megabits per second, it takes 3 minutes and 34 seconds. And I have 150 megabits download, and it would take less than a minute. So it's not quite as important today as far as speed goes, because we are able to transmit large files very quickly. But when you compress files into a zip file, you're making it far easier to send and transfer multiple files at once. A single zip file can include hundreds of other files and folders, which would be a nightmare to send individually. On top of this, .zip files actually reduce the overall file size of your content. This means that you can store your files in a compressed .zip file and save space in your storage. It becomes faster to send the zip files, and it's faster to download them because of the compression that takes place. But don't worry though, once a zip file is uncompressed or unzipped, you'll get all of your files in their original quality and size. If you do transfer a lot of zip files, make sure to delete the archives after uncompressing them, because otherwise you'll have both the .zip file contents and the original .zip, both of which will take up space in your storage. People compress electronic files for different reasons: to make them easier to transport electronically, to organize their backups, or to save device storage space, for example. Let's take a look at zip files on iOS. To do so, you open the Files app on the iPhone or iPad. You navigate to the file or folder you want to create on the zip archive in the Files app, and it can be locally or on the iCloud drive. 3, you tap and hold the file or folder you want to make a zip, and then choose Compress from the pop-up menu. Wait a moment or a few, and the freshly created zip archive will appear in the same folder of Files app. And then 5, repeat with other items you wish to create a zip archive if desired. Let's take a look at what we're talking about. This is my iPhone, and we have some photos that we want to zip up and email to somebody as a group. First, we're going to go to the Files app. When we click on it, we'll see that we have some images and some folders. You might have, obviously, you have a lot more in yours, but we want to choose some files to include in our archive. So you go to the top right where the 3 dots are. When we click on it, we're going to choose Select, and we're going to select what files we want to include in the zip archive. There's 1, 2, and now the third one. Now we go to the bottom right where the 3 dots are, and we're going to tell it to compress. It immediately created an archive.zip, which we can rename. Okay, next what we need to do is open up our email program, create a new email, make sure to give it a subject. Then in the message area, you'll want to hard press until this pop-up comes up where you can select or select all, but notice there's an arrow to the right. You click it once, you quote level, insert photo or video. That's not what we're going to do now. We're going to add a document, which was the next arrow. When we click it, it then shows us all of the documents that are in the folder that we just worked with. We choose the zip. It puts it in our email. Then we're going to type a short message or a long message if you prefer. And then you go to the up arrow to send it, and off it goes. Now let's take a look at what's in that archive. We click it. It says it has 3 items in it. When we click it, it shows us what those 3 items are. And we've created a zip file that contains 3 items. .zip files on Android. To do so, creating zip files is also possible on Android so long as you download an app with the right functionality. In other words, it's not built into the Android operating system. Unfortunately, most of the apps that offer this function aren't exactly among the best Android apps available. So be careful when downloading these apps. A lot of them have advertising, a lot of them don't work well, a lot of them have a lot of bugs in them. For this demo, we're using ZArchiver, which is ad-free and only requests permissions to access files as it should. Once you've installed ZArchiver, open the app. You'll see a simple file navigator. Locate the folder that contains the files you would like to zip. Next, tap the 3 dots at the top and select Create. After, select Create Archive. Choose the archive file type. I suggest going with zip. 7-zip is another choice, and then you also have some tars. If you're unsure, use the .zip and then choose a name. Next, click OK. You can then tap to select multiple files for your zip folder. Once you've selected your files, tap the green tick at the bottom of the screen. If it was successful, you'll see a message pop up saying archive successfully created, and you'll find the new archive file in the folder you've created it in. Let's take a look. Zipping files or archiving files on an Android is not quite as easy as it is on the iPhone or on Windows, and most likely on a Mac. I'm not a Mac user, so I can't vouch for that. But in order to do it on my Android phone, I need to install some software. And what I found, first you have to go to the Google Play Store, and then you have to search for zip or zip file. And the one that's recommended is one down here called ZArchiver. Not by experience, because I am used to WinZip and I'm used to the RAR, but actually of the ones that I read about, ZArchiver is a little bit higher rating, so that's the one I installed. And if I click on it here, it's already installed on here, so it would say open. If it wasn't, it would, where it says open, it would say install, and then I went ahead and I installed it. And we're going to go to find out where it is, and it's on this screen. And it's the ZArchiver. When I click on it, I'm going with all of this. Let's try the DCIM and the camera. And that's where we wanted to go, because we're going to where the camera photos are located. I click on the left, it then highlights it and shows that I've chosen that one. The next one I want to choose is down here at the left, and it highlights it. 727 is the one I want next, which is this one. So I want to take these three pictures and archive them. So we've got them now highlighted. There's a couple of ways I could do it. I could go to the three little dots at the top, or I can click the down arrow. I'm going to click the down arrow, and it gives me some information. One is, what do I want to call the archive? So I'm going to click on that. And now I can change that to either a zip, a tar, and we're going to choose zip. 7Z is if you're using the 7-zip program. I like the zip because almost everything will open the zip. Fast compression, I just leave everything else and I say okay. It has now created a file called AC-zip, and that is in that folder. I'm not sure if that's where we want it or not, but that's where it is. I'm going to exit this, and now we want to create an email. So I'm going to go to my email. I'm going to say I want a new email. We're going to attach from Z Archive. We're going to find the DCIM camera. That's where I put it. We now have it attached. I say, and we tell it to go ahead and send. Make sure we got it all right. And we send it. It says it's sending the email. We check our email and bingo, there it is. We can click on it. There is a zip file, and when we click on that, it says, what do you want to open it with? We say ZA Archiver, and there are the three photos. And if we click on one of them, it's going to say, okay, what do you want to open it with? We're going to say photos, and there's the picture that we wanted with the other three, and that's it. Not easy, but it can be done quickly, and you'll have sent a complete package to the other person so pictures aren't lost. Unzipping is a bit easier on the Android. What we're going to do is we're going to go to My Files or on the Android, and we're going to go to the internal storage. And if you remember, we have that in the DCIM folder and in the camera folder. And there's the ac.zip. We click on it. There are the files, and hit extract. We can take a look at it. And if it wants to know what we want to open it with, we'll open it with photos, and there it is. It's very easy to, you don't have to install the program to look at a zipped file. If you want to zip them, then you do have to have the extra app. .zip files on Windows. Select the files you want to add to the zip file. Right-click one of the files, a menu will appear. In the menu, click Send To and select Compressed Zip Folder, which creates a zip file. A zip file will appear. If you want, you can type a new name for the zip file. Let's see how to do that. To create an archive or zip file in Windows is a lot easier in Windows than it is on the iOS or on the iPhone or iPad or on an Android device. So let's take a look at what we have to do in Windows to create a zip file. Right now we're looking at a folder in my downloads folder, and it's a subfolder called Ring Doorbell. There are 24 items in here. We're going to choose all 24 of those. It's 105 megabytes of 24 files. And we're going to right mouse click, come down to Send To, and then it's going to say Compressed Zip Folder. I'm going to click on that. It's going to create a folder or a file, a zip file, and it's going to call it just something. So we're just going to change that to Ring Files. So we now have a zip file here called Ring Files, and it's just under 60 megabytes. And remember, the whole folder was 105, so it is compressing or letting some of the air out of the tires to make it easier in one package to send everything. So now we have the ringfiles.zip file. We're going to now send it to our desktop, and we're going to bring that onto the here. We'll minimize this. So now all we have is a shortcut to ringfiles.zip. When we click it, it will open up the zip file and show us everything that's in the file. And it also tells us how much of a compression. So it shows the compressed size, the actual size, and what the ratio is. So you can see some of the files have quite a bit of compression, where other ones have very little. Here's a PDF that has a compression rate of 45%. It's almost half the size in a compressed form within the zip file. And that's all there is to creating and taking a look at a zip file in Windows. Thank you very much. I'm Huey Poplock.